The dawn of September 12, 1897, breaks cold and sharp over the arid, unforgiving landscape of the Samana Range. At the small military outpost of Saragarhi, a thin thread of stone and mortar connecting the larger British forts of Lockhart and Gulistan, the day begins with the quiet rituals of soldiers. The 21 men of the 36th Sikhs, a detachment stationed in this remote corner of British India, awake before the sun has fully crested the rugged peaks. They wash in the sparse morning light, their movements deliberate as they go through their morning meditations. The quiet recitations a stark contrast to the vast, silent emptiness of the Hindu Kush foothills. With practiced hands, they affix their turbans, the distinctive symbol of their faith and martial identity, and prepare to face another day in the service of the empire. But this day feels different. An unspoken current of unease permeates the thin mountain air, a collective premonition that the fragile peace of the frontier is about to be shattered. This outpost, Saragarhi, stood directly on a geopolitical fault line, the violent frontier between British India and the tribal territories of Afghanistan. It was a landscape carved by the machinations of the Great Game, the century-long strategic rivalry between the British and Russian empires for supremacy in Central Asia. The British, ever wary of Russian encroachment towards their jewel in the crown, had pushed their influence into these volatile Pashtun lands, drawing a demarcation known as the Durand Line in 1893. This arbitrary border sliced through tribal homelands and stoked the fires of resentment. By 1897, what the British had long feared was coming to pass. Spurred by religious fervor and a deep-seated opposition to foreign interference, the Afridi and Orakzai tribes had risen in a full-scale revolt. They were on the march, a great host intent on raiding the settled plains of British India. The forts of Lockhart and Gulistan, vital to British control of the region, lay directly in their path. For 2 weeks, the rebelling tribesmen had launched furious but unsuccessful assaults against these larger fortifications. Now their attention was turning to the weak link in the chain, the small, isolated signaling post of Saragarhi. The tribesmen expected a swift and easy victory. In their eyes, Saragarhi was a negligible obstacle, a tiny garrison of native troops in the employ of a foreign power, destined to be swept aside by the sheer force of their numbers and righteous fury. They envisioned overrunning the post in a single overwhelming wave, silencing its vital communication link, and continuing their march unimpeded. What they would encounter, however, was not fear, but an unyielding wall of discipline and courage. They expected to face soldiers fighting for pay. They would instead face warriors fighting for honor, duty, and a legacy that would echo through the annals of military history. The barren rock of Saragarhi was about to be consecrated by an act of sacrifice that would transform a tactical skirmish into an immortal legend. As the morning wore on, the 21 Sikhs went about their duties, the routine of military life a temporary bulwark against the growing tension. Suddenly, the quiet is broken by a shout from the lookout post. A soldier, his voice sharp with urgency, cries out, "There is a great mass moving on the horizon." Havildar Ishar Singh, the detachment's commander, a veteran of formidable presence, bellows orders. The men, trained to instinct, rush to the walls, their Lee Metford rifles grasped firmly in their hands. They take up defensive positions, their movements economical and precise. A young soldier, Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, sprints to his designated tower. His duty is not to fight, but to communicate. His weapon is the heliograph, a simple but effective device that uses a mirror to flash sunlight in Morse code, the lifeline connecting Saragarhi to the outside world. From his lonely perch, Gurmukh Singh begins to flash a message to Fort Lockhart, several miles distant. There is a mass on the horizon. Is it hostile? A tense pause follows, the seconds stretching into an eternity. Then the answering flashes come back across the valley. Yes, the reply confirms. 14 standards are counted. A standard, a tribal banner, represented a clan or a large body of fighters. 14 of them signified an army of staggering size, at least 10,000 Pashtun tribesmen, a sea of warriors bearing down on the tiny signaling post. Gurmukh, his hand steady, signals again, the desperation of their situation conveyed in the precise, impersonal dots and dashes of the code. Can you send help? The delay that follows is heavier, more fraught with meaning. Finally, the fateful reply is spelled out by the distant glittering light. No. Reinforcements could not possibly arrive in time, and Fort Lockhart could not risk weakening its own defenses. The 21 men of Saragarhi were on their own. Gurmukh relays the devastating news to Havildar Ishar Singh below. There is no panic. The men check their ammunition, ensuring every round is ready. They reinforce the main gate, stockpiling resources for the siege to come. The rhythmic clatter of their rifles being prepared is the only sound that breaks the grim silence. The heliograph, that simple instrument of mirrored glass and sunlight, becomes the sole witness and narrator of their ordeal. It is the recurring symbol of their unbroken connection to duty, a fragile beacon of order against the encroaching tide of chaos. Through its flashes, their defiance would become immortal. Havildar Ishar Singh gathers his small command. He looks at the faces of his men, knowing that escape is impossible. To flee into the open would be to be cut down in seconds. With the weight of their fate settled upon him, he calls upon them not to surrender but to fight, to hold the post for as long as humanly possible, to buy precious time for the main forts to prepare their defenses. In that moment of ultimate crisis, there is no dissent, no mutiny, no thought of desertion. A profound and solemn consensus settles over the group. They would stand and they would die together. Gurmukh Singh returns to his tower, his purpose now elevated. He signals to Lieutenant Colonel John Houghton, the commanding officer of the 36th Sikhs at Fort Lockhart, that they will hold the line. He will remain at his post, a chronicler of his own unit's final moments, signaling the events of the battle minute by minute. In Fort Lockhart, understanding the historic gravity of the moment, Houghton gives a simple, stark order to his adjutant. Write it down. Every flash from Saragarhi would be recorded for posterity. The battle commences. The sound of tribal trumpets blares across the plateau, and the roar of 10,000 voices rises as a wave of fighters charges the ramparts. The crack of the Sikhs' Lee Metford rifles answers them. Firing with disciplined precision, they unleash a volley into the charging mass. The tribesmen, many armed with older Martini Henry rifles, fall in droves, but their numbers are like the ocean. The first wave breaks, recedes, and is immediately replaced by a second, even more determined assault. A bullet finds its mark, and Sepoy Gurmukh Singh falls, the first casualty. The loss of each man is a devastating blow, reducing their firepower by 5%. A brother in arms, lost forever. The attackers find a blind spot and breach the outer wall. A fierce, close-quarters melee erupts. The cold steel of Sikh bayonets meets the flashing blades of Pashtun swords. The Sikhs, masters of hand-to-hand combat, fight with a ferocity that stuns their attackers, driving the intruders out and securing a brief respite. From outside the walls, the tribal leaders call for surrender, offering wealth, status, and safe passage. The offers are met with silent contempt. As the afternoon sun beats down, the attackers set fires, and thick smoke chokes the air. Through the haze, they breach the main gate. Another brutal melee ensues. Havildar Ishar Singh, now grievously wounded, knows the end is near. To buy his remaining men a few more seconds, he orders them to fall back to the inner sanctum. Then, bellowing the Sikh battle cry, Bole So Nihal, Sat Shri Akal, he single-handedly charges the flood of intruders. For a few heroic moments he is a whirlwind of destruction, but he is finally overwhelmed. His sacrifice, however, has not been in vain. A handful of defenders have made it to the last line of defense. They fight until only one remains. In his tower, Sepoy Gurmukh Singh has watched it all, his heliograph flashing every detail. Now he is alone. He sends one final poignant message. Permission to take up my rifle. From Fort Lockhart, the immediate reply comes, granted. With remarkable composure, Gurmukh packs away his signaling equipment, his duty as a communicator complete. He picks up his rifle just as the tribesmen smash through the door of his tower. Through his telescope, Colonel Houghton watches in awe as the lone Sikh soldier fights with the strength of 10 men. He cuts down attacker after attacker, 20 in total the chronicles would later record, until the terrified tribesmen retreat from the room, refusing to face his blade again. There is a pause, and then smoke billows from the tower. They have chosen to burn him rather than fight him. From within the flames his voice rings out, yelling the battle cry over and over until at last, he too is silent. The stand is over. Saragarhi has fallen. The 21 valiant Sikhs had held out for over 6 hours. In that time, their sacrifice had bought the crucial hours needed for the main British garrisons to be reinforced. The next day, when relief columns retook the post, they found the bodies of the 21 Sikh defenders, surrounded by the corpses of over 600 of their attackers. For their extraordinary bravery, all 21 soldiers were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, the highest gallantry award available to Indian soldiers at the time. It was an unprecedented honor, the first time in the history of the British Empire that every single member of a unit was decorated for their actions in a single battle. Their story became a legend, a testament to the profound meaning of duty. The heliograph, which began the day as a simple tool of military logistics, was transformed by their valor into a pen, writing an epic of courage against the sky. Its final flashes were not just a report of defeat, but a luminous testament to the human spirit's refusal to be broken. It is a timeless truth that freedom is not merely given, but is defended and defined by those willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, whose legacy shines on long after their fleeting lives have passed as constant and as brilliant as the light of a distant star.